The knock on my door came at 11:40 at night, and I knew before I even opened it that something was wrong. Ryan never showed up unannounced. Not once in the 8 years he'd been my husband's best friend. But there he was, standing under the porch light with his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, refusing to look me in the eye. "Claire," he said, and his voice cracked on my name. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else." I remember gripping the doorframe. I remember the cold air rushing past him into the house. I remember thinking, Mark isn't home yet, he's still at the gym, and some part of me already knew this had something to do with my husband. "It's about your sister," Ryan said. My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. "I've been sleeping with Jenna," he said. 4 months. I couldn't keep lying to you anymore. I stood there in my own doorway, in my own home, and for a moment I couldn't process a single word. Jenna. My little sister. The one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The one who cried at my wedding harder than I did. "You're lying," I whispered, though I don't know why that was the first thing out of my mouth. "I wish I was," he said, and something about the way his jaw tightened told me he meant it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed until the sun came up, staring at my phone, scrolling through old photos of Jenna and me at the lake house, at Christmas, at my wedding where she stood beside me in a pale blue dress, smiling like she didn't have a single secret in the world. When Mark finally came home from his gym session, I didn't tell him right away. I watched him toss his gym bag by the door, grab a glass of water, kiss my forehead like it was any other Tuesday. And I thought, if my own sister could lie to my face for months, what else was I missing? I called Jenna the next morning. My hands were shaking so badly I had to redial twice. "Hey," she answered, casual, like nothing in the world was wrong. "What's up?" "Ryan came to see me last night," I said. There was a pause. Just a beat too long. "Okay," she said carefully. "And?" "He told me everything, Jenna." Another pause. Then she laughed, actually laughed, like I'd told her a bad joke. "Told you what exactly?" "Because I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't," I said. "Don't do that. Don't make me feel crazy. Claire, I swear to you, I don't know what he's talking about. Ryan and I aren't even close. We've barely spoken in months." That was the first crack. Because Ryan had told me it had been going on for months. And Jenna was telling me they'd barely spoken in months. Someone was lying, and I didn't know who yet. I spent the next 3 days in a kind of fog. I went through the motions, made Mark's coffee, packed my lunch, smiled at coworkers who asked how my weekend was, but underneath it all, my mind was spinning through every memory of Jenna and Ryan together. Family barbecues. Holiday dinners. The time Ryan drove her to the airport because her car broke down. I'd never once thought anything of it. Why would I? He was my husband's best friend. She was my sister. It was supposed to be safe. On the 4th day, I found something that changed everything. I was looking for a document on Mark's laptop, nothing suspicious, just trying to find our tax files, when I saw a folder labeled personal tucked inside his work drive. My hand hovered over the mouse for a long moment before I clicked it. Inside were messages. Screenshots, saved like evidence, going back almost 2 years. Not between Ryan and Jenna. Between Mark and Jenna. I sat there reading message after message, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. They weren't just messages. They were plans. Hotel confirmations. A message from Mark that said, "I can't keep doing this to Claire, but I can't stop either." A message from Jenna that said, "She's never going to find out. We're careful." I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough that the screen dimmed twice and I had to touch the mousepad to wake it back up. Long enough that my coffee went cold on the counter beside me. My husband. My sister. Not Ryan. Ryan had lied to me. But why would he lie about something like that? Why would anyone claim an affair they didn't have? I didn't confront Mark that night. I didn't confront Jenna either. Instead, I called Ryan. We need to talk, I said. In person. Now. He met me at a coffee shop across town, somewhere none of us ever went, somewhere no one would recognize us. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes, hands trembling around his cup. I found the messages, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Between Mark and Jenna. So why did you tell me it was you? He didn't answer right away. He stared down at the table, at his hands, at anything but my face. Ryan, I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Why did you lie to me? Because Mark asked me to. The words hit me like a slap. He begged me, Ryan continued, his voice breaking. He said if you ever found out, it would destroy you less if you thought it was me. Someone outside the family. Someone you could just cut out of your life and move on. He said if you knew it was Jenna, it would break something that could never be fixed. Your whole family. Your parents. Everything. So you agreed to let me hate you instead, I said, my voice shaking now too. You agreed to sit in my house and lie to my face and let me think my own sister was innocent. I know, he said. I know how it sounds. But Claire, I've known you since college. I couldn't just watch him destroy your life and say nothing. I thought if I told you a version of the truth, even a distorted one, at least you'd know something was wrong. At least you'd start asking questions. I stared at him, trying to understand how someone could think that was mercy. You had no right, I said. You had no right to decide what version of the truth I deserved. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I left the coffee shop without another word. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour, staring at my own hands on the steering wheel like they belonged to someone else. That night, I didn't wait for Mark to come home. I texted him, we need to talk. Come home now. When he walked through the door, I was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open in front of me, the messages still on the screen. I watched the color drain from his face. Claire. Don't, I said. Don't you dare say my name like that. Like you still have the right to. He sat down slowly across from me, like the air had been knocked out of him. How long, I said. It wasn't really a question. I already knew the answer was in the messages, but I needed to hear him say it. 2 years, he whispered. 2 years. 2 Christmases. 2 of my birthdays. My mother's hip surgery, when Jenna and Mark had both stayed over to help take care of her, sleeping down the hall from each other in the same house I grew up in. How could you, I said, and my voice finally broke, all the composure I'd been holding on to for 4 days crumbling at once. How could both of you look at me every single day and pretend? I never stopped loving you, Mark said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away like his touch burned. You don't get to say that to me, I said. Not now. Not after this. He tried to explain. He always tried to explain, that's who Mark was, someone who thought the right words could undo anything. He said it started after a family trip, after too much wine, after feelings that had always been there between him and Jenna that neither of them acted on until that night. He said he hated himself. He said he wanted to end it 100 times but Jenna kept pulling him back in, and he was too weak to walk away. I almost laughed at that. Too weak to walk away, but strong enough to lie to my face for 2 years. I called Jenna again that night. This time she didn't laugh. Claire, please, she said, her voice thin and panicked. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, I said. I've seen everything. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, I never meant for it to happen. You don't accidentally sleep with your sister's husband for 2 years, Jenna. I know, she whispered. I know how it sounds. Do you? I said. Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you looked at everything I had and decided you wanted it too. She started crying, but I didn't feel the pull I used to feel when my little sister cried. I didn't feel the instinct to comfort her, to fix it, to make her pain stop. For the first time in my life, her tears didn't move me at all. I packed a bag that night and left. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I couldn't sleep in that house, in that bed, surrounded by 2 years of lies I'd never even suspected. I ended up at a motel off the highway, sitting on a scratchy bedspread, staring at the water stain on the ceiling until the sun came up. Over the next few weeks, the truth kept unraveling in pieces, each one worse than the last. I found out my mother had suspected something was wrong for months but said nothing, not wanting to start trouble before she knew for certain. I found out Jenna's sudden 2-year estrangement from our aunt hadn't been over some petty argument like she'd claimed. It was because our aunt had seen her and Mark together at a restaurant an hour outside their usual towns, holding hands across the table like people who had nowhere else to hide. Everyone had a piece of the truth. Everyone had chosen silence. I filed for divorce 3 weeks after that night in the kitchen. Mark fought it at first, called me, showed up at my sister's old apartment where I was staying, sent long emails trying to explain the complexity of what happened, as if betrayal needed a thesis to be understood. I stopped responding after the 4th email. Jenna tried a different approach. She sent flowers to my new apartment with a card that said, "I'm still your sister. Please don't shut me out." I threw them in the trash without even taking them out of the box. The hardest part wasn't losing Mark. Somewhere in the weeks that followed, I realized I'd started grieving him the moment I read those messages. Some instinct in me had already begun preparing for life without him before my mind had even caught up. No, the hardest part was losing Jenna. Because losing a husband, as painful as it is, still leaves you as yourself. But losing a sister, someone whose entire existence was tangled into every memory of your childhood, every holiday, every inside joke, every late-night phone call, that felt like losing a piece of my own history. Like someone had reached back through 28 years of my life and rewritten every good memory into something I couldn't trust anymore. Ryan reached out once during that time. He didn't call, he texted, careful, respectful of the distance I clearly needed. Just one message: "I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I just want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. Not just the lie." I didn't answer for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I wrote back one line: "You should have just told me the truth." He replied almost instantly: "I know. I was scared of what would happen to you if I did. I see now that wasn't my choice to make." I appreciated the honesty, even if it came far too late to matter the way it should have. Divorce proceedings dragged on for nearly 5 months. Mark wanted to split things evenly, as if fairness was something he still had the right to negotiate. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia who'd clearly seen every version of this story before, told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "People think betrayal is about what happens in the moment. It's not. It's about what happens in all the moments after, when they had the choice to tell you and chose not to, over and over again." That stuck with me more than anything Mark or Jenna ever said in their defense. By the time the divorce was finalized, I'd moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, one with creaky floors and a view of a parking lot instead of the backyard garden I used to tend with Mark. I remember standing in that empty apartment on my first night there, boxes stacked around me, and instead of feeling sad, I felt something closer to relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for years without realizing it, and I was finally allowed to exhale. My parents took it hard, caught in the impossible position of loving both daughters while one of us had shattered the other's life. My mother called me every few days, careful, gentle, always asking how I was doing without ever quite bringing herself to say Jenna's name. My father, in his own quiet way, stopped speaking to Jenna almost entirely for the better part of a year. I never asked him to. He just did. 6 months after the divorce, I heard through my mother that Mark and Jenna were still together, that they'd moved in together across town, that they were trying to build something out of the wreckage they'd made. Part of me expected to feel rage when I heard that. Instead, I felt almost nothing. A quiet, distant sort of pity, maybe. Because I understood something they didn't yet, that a relationship built on someone else's ruin rarely survives once the thrill of secrecy is gone. Betrayal is exciting when it's forbidden. It's a lot harder to sustain once it's just ordinary life. I was right, as it turned out, though I didn't find satisfaction in it the way I thought I might. A year and a half later, my mother mentioned, almost in passing, that Mark and Jenna had split. Apparently the same restlessness that pulled them together eventually pulled them apart. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them.